What's the most inappropriate thing you've witnessed at a funeral? A narcissistic family member arrived late, after everyone else was at the graveside for the burial, and probably lurking behind a tomb to pick the perfect time after the priest had just started talking, wearing an enormous hat and sunglasses and low-cut gown like she was attending the Golden Globes red carpet or something, and loudly making an absolute scene of how devastated she was, darlings, and just generally making it all about her. The mother of the deceased putting on a terribly acted and meth-fueled show about how much she loved and missed her daughter. Shortly thereafter she was convicted of the daughter's murder. Oh shoot. Yeah, this one wins. We had a snowball fight outside the parlor of my Pop-Pop's funeral. Pop-Pop would have approved. The non-family mourners seemed horrified. I cannot stand the whole "you have to be sad at funerals" thing. I hope something silly like this happens at my funeral. The funeral home putting a random guy in my grandfather's casket, suit, glasses, and wedding band, while then admitting that they had misplaced my grandfather was fairly inappropriate for a funeral. Why did they feel that a loner corpse was an acceptable solution? That approach is probably what started this mess in the first place. A relative of my husband died. There was a gathering at her house after the funeral, hosted by her husband. It was mostly family of my husband, but there were a few friends. There was catered food and drink and people were just general socializing and telling nice stories about the deceased. About 2 hours in, a man and woman in their mid-20s show up. They are acquaintances of the widower. They walk around the house a bit, grab a drink and then disappear. I was asked to get some more drinks from the garage, which was off the kitchen. I opened the door and stepped into the garage. There was the young couple, leaning against a car and engaging in some pretty vigorous sexual relations. Another family member who was standing in the kitchen saw what I saw. I backed out of the garage because I was fairly embarrassed. I mean, who does that at a funeral? I guess the other relative told the widower because the next thing I know there is shouting from the garage and the widower is telling these two people in no uncertain terms that they needed to leave. Apparently, not only were they having fun in the garage, but they were doing lines of coke off the hood of the car. Only a few people who were at the gathering found out what happened, thank goodness. People are super weird. I am however glad that the widower said something because it seems like in a lot of the stories people are not taking action and it is really infuriating. Although I do understand because obviously it's an emotional situation already. When my dad's mom passed away, there were a lot of people there. He comes from a family of 11, 10 now as his sister passed away a while ago, so there were a lot of nieces, nephews and cousins. It was an open casket. I was around 12 to 13, but everyone was grabbing things from her/off her from the casket, all the aunts grabbing things for their kids who don't even know her/remember who she is/way too young. The only thing my dad has a keepsake of his mother is a little rose pin that she wore in the home she was in before she passed. It's unfortunate and makes me feel very sad for my dad. I had to respond. My family is exactly like this, big family, not much to go around. Greedy. Growing up, I didn't matter and my voice didn't matter. When my grandmother died the aunts descended like vultures, literally tearing apart her jewelry boxes and wardrobe for things for them and their children to remember her by. It was also fake, we didn't care about each other while she was alive, why the sudden rush for trinkets at death? Your comment really touched me but also kind of comforted me knowing that there are other huge, shallow families out there. It's nice that you have a good relationship with your dad, though. Oh frick. My time to shine. Former mortuary industry worker. The worst is hard to call because I've seen a lot. Some honorable mentions. A rando walking on off the street and proceeding to help herself to coffee and oating in our bathroom. Didn't die. Did get Narcaned. A couple fooling around in the urn/casket showroom during the viewing. An angry old woman storming out of the bathroom with a fistful of tampons, screaming about how inappropriate we were for keeping them in there, because there are children here. She threw them at the funeral director's face. They were kept in a cabinet, in a small basket, well hidden from public view. She was definitely rifling around to have found them. We were no longer allowed to keep our sanitary products in the restrooms after this. A grief-stricken mother tipping her son's casket while wailing and trying to climb inside. Less inappropriate than it was terribly sad. Caught a junkie relative digging deep into the pockets of the deceased looking for, the family and as assumed, money. A woman pulling down her child's pants and letting it shoot in a potted plant. The funeral homeowner's horrible dog sashaying up to the front and taking a giant liquid shoot in front of the casket and horrified guests in the middle of the service. The same dog biting someone at another service. Tons of brawls. Lots of drinking. Biker funerals were insane. The women were meaner than hell and fighting one another constantly. The dudes were awesome though. Super respectful, cleaned the place up perfectly, and even hauled their trash away. Most of which was bags of beer cans and liquor bottles. I loved biker funerals. I have so many. But I'll stop here. I witnessed the estranged drunk and druggy daughter of a family friend come screaming into the visitation looking for her brothers because she had found out she was never written into the will. It was a hell of a scene. Edits, I had to actually ask because people brought up good points. This was in Missouri. Missouri is an affirmative disinheriting state. The will according to brother number 1 said she was actively excluded from the official will and entitled to no portion of the estate, named her ex-husband a portion of the home sale. Brother number 2 bought his father out and kept it, and the remaining estate to both of her sons. The daughter was allowed personal effects, hence the police escort when getting them, probably to ensure she didn't try and swipe anything else. His mother had handwritten an unofficial one to be read to her children. Also, Ash had every chance to get clean between 16-18 and 27. Both parents were more than willing and able to pay for treatment. She actively chose not to, as well as actively chose not to seek treatment for whatever was going on in her life that caused her to turn to drugs as a way to cope. She wasn't even going to come to the funeral until she checked with the lawyer the day of and flipped shit. At an open casket wake, a friend of the deceased attempted to give her a drink of single malt whiskey. She ended up being forcibly removed as she wouldn't stop and spilled a lot of the alcohol in the casket. It was as horrible and inappropriate as it was heartbreaking, for everyone. Someone should have told her the morticians usually wire the deceased's jaws shut to keep the mouth from opening. Oh yeah, I'll try to work that casually into conversation. Alright everyone, before we go in, just one quick note to make. I know we all loved Heather and her wicked keg stands, but she has now crossed the eternal threshold from 40 ounces to freedom. And even though it would be friggin' awesome, please do not pour anything into, or on, her corpse. You forgot to add because her jaw is wired shut. Edit, my first Reddit gold. Thank you. Someone trying to quietly open a can while they were doing the closing prayer. Edit, thank you kind people for the gold and silver. There's a Billingval joke in there somewhere. This is pretty low-key hilarious thinking about it. My cousin's funeral. He was 27 years old and killed in a single car crash after he hit a slippery patch on the road and smashed into a concrete wall. At his funeral, all of his brothers, sisters, and parents sat on the front row at his graveside service. Then, lo and behold, my cousin's ex-girlfriend of over a year shows up and immediately inserts herself onto the front row next to his sisters. And proceeds to scream cry, scream wail, and throw herself on the ground periodically throughout the service. All of the family just gave her awkward stares, with no one wanted to address her inappropriate behavior. I had never seen the type of attention-demanding drama queen antics before, or since. Edit, just wanted to throw this in. This was a funeral with military honors, Air Force, and they did the gun salute at the gravesite. I don't remember how many times they fire, but at each gunshot, she would literally shriek and collapse into the arms of either of the sisters standing next to her. I do recall at the very end, the youngest sister was sick of that shit and just let her fall on the ground. And it was raining heavily and rather muddy. My dad's cousin, who didn't like our family, did this at my sister's visitation. She showed up and started bawling over the casket and brushing the side of my sister's face. I walked over there to comfort her and she shoved me. I had no sleep, nothing to eat for a few days, and I fell almost taking the casket down with me. That cousin stopped crying, straightened up and apologized to everyone except me. That's when you fight a big funeral or no. Maybe isn't as over the top as most of these comments, but I'm one of the Marines that has to go present the flag to the next of kin when a service member dies. It's usually old Vietnam and Korea vets, but sometimes it's a Desert Storm or recent war vet and the mother is there receiving the flag instead of a son or daughter. Point is, I've probably been to 45 funerals in the past year. It's striking how often someone's phone goes off during the service. It seems nearly every other or every third service someone's ringtones start playing. There's been a few times where someone will get up from their seat and answer the phone too. Oh god, I just remembered something. I did base honor guard in the Air Force, so same jazz, person handing flag to next of kin. We have two people, both of us fold it, then one presents it and the other plays taps. Since most of us can't actually play taps, there's a speaker in the bugle that we discreetly hide so that it's not obvious. We just push the button and pretend, everyone cries, we leave. I was the taps guy. I hit the button, taps starts. And sputters out halfway in. There's nothing I can do here except act like it finished. I felt so bad. I swear I checked those batteries. We always check them before we leave, carry spares, and then check them again right before the service. They worked both times I checked them. And then they gave up when it mattered. I probably did 70+ funerals in a 4-month period, and goddamn do I feel bad about that one.